$1 million for one night, but not as you might think. He offered her the room, no touching, only a chance to reclaim the sleep she'd lost. Amelia's answer, sharp as a blade. It tore through the silence. Could a single no change one's destiny? What would you do when faced with such temptation? All right, my dear audience, get ready for a story that will leave you awestruck. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly connect with what I'm presenting here. And leave a comment below to tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always thrilling to see viewers joining us from all around the world. Amelia Quinn, 28, is a name no one remembers. Yet her hands move with the precision of someone safeguarding her own honor in every cup of coffee. She lives quietly, as steadily as the ticking clock on the wall of the Willow Diner. Her world is defined by wiping tables, totaling bills, and checking her brother's medication before bedtime. There are no paintings on the walls of her tiny apartment, only faded paint boxes and unfinished sketches hidden beneath the bed, always sacrificed to cover utilities and prescriptions. Each morning, she sketches a dream in her mind. Each night, she tucks it carefully into the back of her closet. Sometimes, she wonders if she still has the capacity to dream, or if that is merely the memory of someone who once believed art could save her from poverty and pain. Lucas Reed, a tech millionaire, enters the diner like a man who's lost his way. Not because he doesn't recognize the place, but because it's been so long since he felt anywhere was truly his own. His shirt is unpressed, his tie hangs loose, exhaustion weighs on his frame. He isn't striving for simplicity. He simply lacks the strength to be anything other than himself. Lucas once made decisions that sent stocks soaring. But after his wife's death, he lost the ability to sleep. Every night is a silent battleground, and Nora, his 7-year-old daughter, is the only reason he clings to the shred of decency he has left. He steps into the Willow Diner as though stepping into a distant memory. There's nothing remarkable here, yet he's drawn to its unassuming quiet. And to the woman whose eyes seem to contain a storm no one is allowed to touch. He orders a coffee, but he doesn't drink. He watches Amelia move as if every gesture has been programmed by endurance. He makes his offer just as she turns to leave, his voice heavy with an unspoken burden. $1 million. Just for one night of her company. No intimacy, no contact. Only so he can sleep. Amelia paused. She did not turn, nor did she show surprise. She simply set the coffee tray down. The movement was slow, deliberate, carrying a firmness that made it clear no repetition was necessary. I don't sell my time for any price. Her words bore no thorns, yet they left no opening for intrusion. Lucas did not flare with anger. He simply tilted his head as if hearing for the first time a language he once knew but had long since forgotten. He looked at her as though trying to decipher something obscured for too long by spreadsheets and unnamed sorrow. "Aren't you curious who I am?" he asked. Not because he craved recognition, but because he was surprised not to be seen as a talking leather wallet. Amelia shrugged, not the kind of shrug born of indifference, but one from someone all too accustomed to men placing themselves at the center of her universe. Curiosity doesn't pay the rent. The calm authority in that remark silenced him. There was nothing to argue, no reason to resume their bargaining. And yet the next evening he returned, not to buy, but to understand. He didn't know what he was seeking, but when he stepped in and saw her standing there, polishing a cup as though it were the only trustworthy thing in the world, he knew he couldn't stay away. There was something in her steadfast silence that made him feel safe. Not safe in the sense of being protected, but safe in the absence of scrutiny. Amelia did not ask why he had come back. She showed no surprise. She merely glanced at him, then returned to her unfinished work. Between them, there lay no connection but the unspoken. Yet sometimes, that very silence speaks louder than any words. And in that moment, they both understood. Sometimes a single no is not an end, but the beginning of a story someone once believed they didn't deserve. One afternoon, Lucas took Nora to the Willow Diner. The little girl sat in the corner of the cafe, her curly hair tied back with a blue ribbon, her eyes fixed on the paper before her. Streaks of marker formed the shape of a spaceship, distorted yet full of life. Nora paid no heed to the clatter of cups or the hurried footsteps of adults. In her world at that moment, there was only her and her imagination. Amelia was wiping down a table when her gaze met Nora's, not the shy or fearful look children reserve for strangers, but pure, crystalline curiosity. "Do you think I draw well?" Nora asked, her voice small but clear. She held up the paper like a gift. Amelia sat down, not out of habit as a server, but as if summoned into a world she had long forgotten. She picked up a marker, added a star beside the spaceship. No explanation, no showiness, just a delicate stroke, like companionship. "I think it needed a friend," she said, her eyes never leaving the page. Nora giggled. The sound made Lucas look up. He was seated a few tables away, and in that moment he froze, not from surprise, but because something inside him had been touched by a memory long locked away. Lucas watched Amelia talking with Nora. She wasn't trying to ingratiate herself. She wasn't coaxing or feigning interest. She was simply present, as if she understood that sometimes children don't need guidance, only someone willing to listen. When Nora spoke of her mother being up in the sky, Amelia did not flinch. She did not change the subject. She did not hesitate. She merely whispered, "Your mother must be so proud, because you shine brighter than the Milky Way." Lucas wrapped his hand lightly around his coffee cup. That phrase wasn't meant solely for Nora. It pierced him too, as though someone had translated the language of the unnamed pain he carried. In Amelia's gaze, there was no pity, only gentle acknowledgement, no demands attached. Nora continued to draw, this time planets misshapen, stars with wings, and a heart floating in the void. Amelia stayed where she was, watching intently as though witnessing a masterpiece. Lucas said nothing, but he remembered, not every word, but the shift in the air around them, something that could not be bought. That evening, when Amelia brought the bill, Lucas didn't say much. He simply left a small note beside his tip. It was a drawing Nora had made, a picture of the girl and a woman smiling, their hands touching, framed by a galaxy painted in 5 different colors. Below, in Nora's scrawl with a marker, read, "Thank you for making me smile." Amelia held the drawing in her hands for a long moment, without speaking. But as she returned to the counter, she took a piece of tape, affixed it to the back wall, where she could see it every day. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was real. Because it was the first time in ages someone had thanked her for who she was, not for the service she provided. She didn't know what that drawing would change. She only knew that something inside her chest had softened. A crack she had thought calloused suddenly warmed, as though touched. No one in the diner knew that a tiny light had been lit. Not dazzling, but enough to dissolve part of the darkness. And Lucas, as he stepped out of the diner, did not look back. Yet in his mind lingered the image of 2 women, one who had left and one who remained. And for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid he would forget either of them. Everything began to crack the moment the name Vincent Cole resurfaced in Lucas's life. A former partner, once a companion on the startup journey. But ambition and the fear of being overshadowed drove Vincent to exploit Lucas's wife's death to manipulate shares, quietly swallowing power bit by bit. Vincent could not forgive Lucas's silence, nor accept his choice to step away from the spotlight. When he discovered Lucas frequenting a small diner in Portland, he saw a new opportunity, not to negotiate, but to strike. The message arrived late one afternoon. Amelia was reviewing the day's last invoices when her phone buzzed. A photo, taken from afar, her and Lucas sitting opposite each other in the diner. Below it, a cold caption. "The Waitress and the Millionaire? The board will love this story." Amelia's throat went dry. Her fingers clenched the phone's edge, not from fear, but because she understood this was no longer personal. She had just stepped into a game she never chose. That evening, Vincent appeared at the diner, impeccably dressed, a flawless suit, but his smile was as sharp as a blade. He sat at the counter, ordered coffee without touching the rim, simply waiting for the right moment to move in. "Do you know who you're playing with, Amelia?" he asked, his voice lowered but clear enough to threaten. No anger, just the coldness of someone used to controlling others. Amelia faced him, cloth in hand. She did not back down. Looking straight into his eyes, she spoke softly but without trembling. "I don't play games, and I'm not afraid of you." Vincent did not respond immediately. He laughed, a faint, dismissive laugh as if she had answered a riddle incorrectly. But before he could say more, Lucas walked in, no questions asked. Amelia's expression and Vincent's presence spoke volumes. Lucas approached, unhurried, his gaze fixed on Vincent, his voice low and resolute. "If you want to fight, fight me, not her." Vincent laughed again. A brief sound, then gone. He stood, said nothing further, but left a small envelope on the counter. No one opened it on the spot, but inside was a printed fake article accusing Lucas of using his influence to hide an illicit affair, turning Amelia into the target of ridicule. The gold-digging waitress. The small kitchen at the back of the diner became a temporary refuge. Amelia sat on a stool, her hands gripping the edge of her apron. Lucas stood a few paces away, unsure how to channel his anger and helplessness. She looked up, her eyes rimmed with red, yet unwavering. "I don't want to be drawn into your world," she said, her voice trembling, yet every word clear. "I wasn't born to be a pawn for wealthy men playing mind games." Lucas didn't respond immediately. He looked at her and saw the woman before him was no longer the quiet waitress who wiped tables each night, but someone fighting to preserve her last shred of dignity in a world where everything has a price. "I don't want to drag you in either," he said, his tone low and measured. "But I'm here because I see you. Not as a waitress, but as Amelia, the woman who makes my daughter smile effortlessly." She turned away, yet her hand gripped the edge of the chair. Lucas stepped closer. He didn't touch her, but his voice seemed to reach into the empty space inside her. "Peace isn't running from trouble. It's knowing what's worth fighting for." That wasn't a promise, nor a vow, but a thin veil draped over a cracked heart. Amelia didn't answer, yet she didn't walk away. And to Lucas, that was enough to understand. She was staying. Not for him, but for herself, because something inside her had been awakened. Dear audience, take a moment to relax or grab a glass of water, then listen on for the next twists in our story. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always a thrill to see viewers joining us from around the world. Comment number 1 if you enjoyed the story so we can bring you more great tales. Pressure from Vincent quickly caused the board of directors to waver. Whispers in closed corridors, emails sent without clear recipients, all indicating one thing. Lucas faced the risk of losing everything he'd spent his life building. But what worried him most wasn't the shares. It was the look in Amelia's eyes when she stepped back from his life. Not a loud protest. No accusations. Just the silence of someone striving to protect the one small thing that still brought peace. Amelia understood that she had become the unwilling center of attention. And for the first time in her life, she could not hide in the small kitchen or behind her quiet sketches after work. She had to face them, not merely to protect herself, but to reclaim her dignity, for herself and for all those like her, the silent laborers constantly overlooked, perpetually judged by others' gazes. The backyard of the Willow Diner wasn't an ideal place to speak honestly, but for Amelia it was the only safe space. No professional lighting, no scripted lines, only a phone placed on a stack of cardboard boxes, her worn apron and hair tied neatly at her nape. She looked straight into the lens, her voice trembling slightly, yet every word clear. I am Amelia Quinn, a waitress, not a gold digger. I was offered $1 million. I refused, not because I'm noble, but because I want to live true to myself. She paused, breathed, then continued. If friendship, kindness, and trust are scandalous, then I'm willing to be the headline. I'm not perfect, but I refuse to pretend to be anyone else. No background music, no effects, yet that video spread like wildfire, not through anger, but through authenticity. Bus drivers, cashiers, single mothers, they saw themselves in her, an ordinary person, thrust into a world of opulence she never chose, yet still standing firm. Lucas watched the video in an empty boardroom. No one beside him. Yet seeing her on the small screen reminded him of something he'd long forgotten. Courage isn't standing before hundreds with a microphone. It's daring to speak the truth when no one is on your side. He told no one, asked no opinions. He simply sent out a press conference invitation, no brand name, no descriptive blurb, just an invitation to hear a man speak words he'd never dared to say. On the day of the press conference, the auditorium was packed. The media expected a rebuttal, a defense, a publicity stunt. But Lucas stepped onto the stage in a simple suit, holding a single folded sheet of paper, no LED screen behind him, no assistants at his side. I built an empire. I know negotiation, victory, and making millions. But I forgot how to live. He paused. The silence was thick. No one stirred. Amelia reminded me that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account, but by how they make others feel seen. For the first time, Lucas didn't speak as a CEO, but as a man reclaiming the humanity within himself. Not to regain a company, but to rediscover why he began in the first place. The audience sat in stunned silence. Then one pair of hands clapped, then two, then 100, until the entire room erupted in applause. Vincent lost credibility. Those who once hesitated turned their backs. But Lucas didn't care about that victory, for his greatest triumph came when he stepped out of the auditorium, knowing he could look in the mirror without flinching from his own gaze. As for Amelia, she didn't watch the press conference. She kept wiping tables, serving customers, and dropping her tips into the glass jar as she always did. Yet inside her something had shifted. Not because of the viral video, not because of the praise, but because she chose to stand up. And for the first time, she didn't feel small in this world. One evening, when Portland lay bone-chilling in silence, Amelia sat in her tiny apartment, the walls long accustomed to her size. She opened the old wooden box she'd never dared touch for years, the box her mother had left behind. It wasn't a precious heirloom, only fragments of memory, a faded sketchbook, chalky pencil lines, a few pages torn at the corners. But to Amelia, it was the only thing left from someone who once taught her that dreaming wasn't a luxury. She turned each page, rediscovering imperfect drawings, a half-finished flower, a crooked little house. Yet on the very last page lay a line written in a gentle, trembling hand. Amelia, don't be afraid to love, even if your heart has been broken. Tears fell without warning, quietly, yet they lingered as though she'd held them in with every breath for years. She realized she'd been living as though always waiting for the next storm, forever bracing for abandonment. To survive, she had locked her heart away, refused anyone access, denied anyone the sight of her soft spots. A soft knock came at the door, 3 gentle taps, neither hurried nor insistent. Lucas stood there, in his hand a large sheet of paper folded into quarters. He said little. He simply held it out to her, a drawing by Nora, done in crayon, childish lines, yet depicting 3 figures, Amelia, Nora, and Lucas, standing side by side beneath a star-filled sky. Nora says you're the brightest star, Lucas whispered, and I agree. No declaration of love followed, but in his eyes was a certainty Amelia had never seen. Not infatuation, but recognition. Something that had always been there, waiting for the right moment to be named. From that day on, they made no grand plans, offered no promises of tomorrow, only small, honest moments. They ate sandwiches at a little shop on Cannon Beach. Nothing fancy, no need for pretense. Lucas chewed slowly, laughed when Amelia scrunched her nose at the spicy mustard. They painted with Nora, each with a different color, no one correcting another's strokes. And sometimes they simply sat together under the moonlight, speaking no words, yet understanding each other more deeply than any conversation could. One night, after the diner had closed, Amelia poured 2 cups of tea and sat beside Lucas. She told him about her brother, the sleepless nights tending to his medication, the half-finished dreams in her sketchbook, the guilt she felt whenever she held a brush, because to her, art was an extravagance when someone at home needed medicine each month. Lucas didn't interrupt, didn't offer solutions. He simply listened. Then, quietly, he reached out and took her hand, not gripping, just a gentle touch, as if to say, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to be strong alone, he said, his eyes never leaving their joined hands. Those words weren't grand, but it was the first time someone had acknowledged that she'd been strong for far too long, and that no one should have to shoulder the world by themselves. Their love did not arrive like a storm, not loud, not spectacular like fireworks. It was a small flame, smoldering, yet warm enough. The warmth needed to banish the long, cold nights each had once faced alone. Lucas, who had once lived to the rhythm of deals and numbers, now learned to live slowly, not because he had to, but because Amelia made him want to pause, to breathe, to savor each moment. You make me want to live slowly, Lucas murmured, his voice low as a confession. And I never knew how beautiful that could be. Amelia said nothing. She simply tilted her head and rested it on his shoulder. A gentle gesture, yet for her a giant step. Because for the first time, she believed that if she offered her heart, someone would cherish it, not as a reward, but as a gift to be held with both hands. Amelia left her job at the Willow Diner not because she was tired, but because it was time for her to live her own dream. She opened a small art studio in Portland. No lavish decor, no elaborate signage, but a place filled with the quiet dreams of children, of adults who once thought it too late to begin again. No fees, no skill assessments, only a heart willing to learn and hands ready to try. Lucas supported her, yet never stepped in front. He remained in the background so Amelia could step into the light. "This isn't my project," he'd say when praised. "This is her dream." And in his eyes, you saw complete faith in the woman who once wiped tables, who once tucked her dreams beneath bills and responsibilities. On opening day, the studio rang with laughter. The first paintings hung on every wall, messy, awkward, but as vibrant as childhood itself. Nora, now 8, was chosen to cut the ribbon, dressed in a white dress, scissors in hand. She emerged before the crowd with a confidence that surprised the adults. "This place," Nora announced, "is where everyone finds their star." The audience laughed. Applause erupted. Yet amid the noise, Amelia stood beside Lucas, feeling something she'd never dared hope for. A whole heart, not because of success, but because of meaning. Not because she had gained something, but because she had become something. A giver. On their wedding day, there were no grand ceremonies, no fireworks, no red carpets, only a field of wildflowers on the outskirts of Portland. Friends from the Willow Diner, the humble souls who stood by her through rainy days, were all there. Nora scattered petals along the aisle, her hair dancing in the breeze as though weaving a fairy tale. There was no officiant, only vows spoken from the heart. Amelia looked at Lucas, her eyes gleaming not with tears, but with peace. She said, "You don't promise me the world, but you promise me your presence every day." Lucas smiled, took her hand firmly, without hesitation. "You are home," he replied, "and I have found you." No more words were needed, for everything that mattered lay in how they looked at each other, in their silent understanding. Afterwards, a reporter asked Amelia about her legacy. Is it the art studio? The viral video? The story of a waitress turned inspiration? Amelia glanced at Lucas and Nora. Her daughter sat beneath a tree, absorbed in drawing, while Lucas held the paper steady against the wind. She smiled, then slowly said, "My legacy is knowing that happiness isn't what you own, but what you share." Their story didn't end with a climactic flourish, but with the continuation of ordinary things. In Portland, in a quiet corner, 3 people stood together. No empire, no spotlight, only love, and everyday moments shared. No one can pinpoint exactly what brought them here. Was it the refusal of $1 million? A child's drawing? A handhold in a tiny kitchen? Or all of it? But the clearest truth is this. They chose each other, not because they were perfect, but because they dared to stay when everything around them told them to walk away. And if you've read this far, perhaps you're also seeking a reason to believe. This story makes no promises of magic. but it reminds us that sometimes the courage to say no to fear, to falsehood, to the easy path can open doors to our true selves. Where are you watching from? Share this story if it touched your heart. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss more inspiring tales. Every view, every comment, every share fuels the flame of love, hope, and kindness. Thank you. And always remember, quiet miracles are happening every day.